My dear brothers, sisters, elders, and youngsters, one of the most elusive concepts and outcomes in life is the outcome and the intended goal of finding conviction. When a person lacks in conviction, they lack in commitment. There is no istiqamah without yaqeen. There is no commitment to any aspect of life, as trivial or as mundane as it may be, without having a form of conviction. People are unable to choose a career path without conviction. They're unable to choose a spouse without conviction. They're unable to choose which house or car to purchase without conviction. Because without conviction, there is no commitment. But dear friends, how would it be possible if we recognize that these mundane, trivial commitments in life are difficult to make, become challenging, and even at times become burdensome to make without clarity and conviction? Then I ask you and myself, how would it be possible for a person to make their commitments to Allah, for one to make their commitments to their deen, through their children, through their talent, through their wealth, through their life, without conviction? قُلْ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَايِي وَمَمَاتِي لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. This concept that is put on a pedestal for believers to recognize and intend to bring into their life and make it a part of their day-to-day life, that my life, my day, my movements, my wealth, everything that I own belongs to Allah, to the extent that even when a person leaves from this world, we say, لِلَّهِ مَا أَعْطَى وَلِلَّهِ مَا أَخَذ. For Allah is what He gives, and for Allah is what He takes. How are the people of Gaza so committed and continue to be committed? Commitment is only a byproduct of conviction. When a person lacks in conviction, they lack in commitment. When a person lacks in their conviction that my salat is what solves my problems, they will lack in their commitment to salat. When a person lacks in their commitment that charity purifies wealth, they will lack in their conviction to commit to it. This is the name of the game. Anywhere where we struggle in life, within the aspects of our deen or outside of it, in aspects of our dunya, it's because there's a lack of conviction. And confusion and a lack of clarity can be paralyzing. That a person it becomes difficult to make the simplest decisions. And when it becomes difficult to make the simplest decisions, we seek clarity from outside, but the reality is that I'm unable to commit because I don't have conviction in that which I'm pursuing. My dear friends, the Sahabah, radiyallahu anhum ajma'een, were people that were struggling with life before Islam came. They struggled to know which decisions to make and how to make their decisions, because the reality of life is there is no possible pathway. There is no possible pathway of conviction without having Allah in our life. إِنَّهُ لَحَقُّ الْمُبِينَ لِيُحِقُّ اللَّهُ الْحَقِّ وَيُبْطِلَ الْبَاطِلِ. Every other facade, every other trend and fad is simply a form of deterring us from recognizing what brings conviction. Beyond the aspect of Allah's presence, which is the ultimate truth, every other attempt is simply a form of deterrence. It's simply a form of taking us away and moving us away from the ultimate truth. Before Islam, these individuals were not seen to be of value. These individuals could hardly survive in their own difficulty and trauma. These are people who would bury their daughters. These are people who would steal from the wealth of orphans. These are people who the Persians and the Romans would say, they're not worth exhausting our resources upon, because they will give us nothing in return. The shift didn't take place because conviction came through wealth. The shift did not take place because conviction came through education, though there are factors to be recognized. Conviction came because Alif Lam Mim, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابِ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. Conviction came because Allah gave them Qur'an. Conviction came because Allah gave them the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which meant that whatever he taught us to do, I have yaqeen that there is goodness in this for me. Children search for conviction through their senses. Adults search for conviction through their logic. As we grow, knowledge is what provides conviction. When individuals begin their journey to Allah, they will ask for, can I see the truth? Can I see Allah, as the people of Bani Israel said? They will say, can I see it? I want to see Jannah so I can sacrifice for it. If the prerequisite of conviction was sight, there would be no one sitting here that has yaqeen. The condition for yaqeen was never seeing it. The condition for yaqeen was having belief simply by receiving the knowledge that Allah gave us. Therefore, wahi was empowering. It was powerful because it gave yaqeen. The Prophet ﷺ came to a man by the name of Haritha, and he said, كيف أصبحت يا حارثة? He said, well, Haritha, how'd you wake up today? How was your morning? All of us today are sitting here, we all woke up today. May Allah give us all long, healthy lives and our families and children. But when we wake up in the morning, that's the Prophet ﷺ asking after Fajr prayer, كيف أصبحت يا حارثة? How did you wake up today? And Haritha understood that the Prophet wasn't asking him about his physical being or asking him about something else that is important, but at this point is tertiary. كيف أصبحت يا حارثة? How do you wake up in regards to the most important aspect of your life? He recognized it. He said, أصبحت بالله مؤمنا حقا. He said, Ya Rasulullah, what a bold answer. He said, Ya Rasulullah, I woke up as a true believer. I have complete yaqeen in Allah. I have complete belief in Allah. And my iman is strong. I know who I am. رضيت بالله ربا. The morning affirmations teach us not to be confused about life. And in this country, all across the world, confusion has become the natural response of every decision, of every question. They've made us doubt the purpose of life, which is the clearest answer. وَمَنْ أَرَادَ الْآخِرَةَ وَسَعَى لَهَا سَعْيَهَا. The clearest answer is that the pursuit of life is Allah's ridha. The pursuit of life is the pleasure of Allah, whether it is in moments of ease or discomfort, whether we can see the effect or we can't see the effect. Ita'ah, obedience. Obedience creates conviction. When a person commits to obedience, they find yaqeen. وَاعْبُدْ رَبَّكَ حَتَّى يَأْتِيَكَ الْيَقِينَ. There is no yaqeen by philosophy. There is no yaqeen by theory. The Sahabah were not theorizing iman in Makkah. When they would ask the companions, what did you do in the 10 years of Makkah where there was no where there was no salah, there was no zakat, there was no siyam, there was no physical display of being a Muslim. So what did you guys do for 10 years? They would say, تَعَلَّمْنَا الْإِيمَانَ وَالْيَقِينَ. We learned what conviction was. We learned what iman was. So now when Umar radiyallahu anhu is entering into Baytul Maqdis to conquer the lands of Quds at the hands of Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah radiyallahu anhu, and the Christian generals and the leadership says that we will hand over the keys to you without any battle or any form of engagement. This is your land. And after Umar radiyallahu anhu reaches the camps of the Muslims, and the next day he is preparing to approach the Christian leadership, and he's dressed in a certain way, the way that he chose to dress. Being poor or being rich in itself is not virtuous. Poverty and wealth are simply a form of a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. الطاعم الشاكر كالصائم الصابر. A person who eats well but is grateful has the same rank as a person who is poor and is patient. Our situations are not definitive to our outcomes. Our responses are. How do we respond to a moment of struggle? How do we respond to a moment of ease? Our situations are simply a test. But he chose to be simple. He says he was wearing these clothes that had patches upon them. And Abu Ubaidah said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, if I'm not overstepping my area, أَيَنْبَغِي لَكَ أَن تُبَدِّلَ ثِيَابَكَ? If it's okay for me to request, would it be possible for you to change your clothes? Would it be possible for us to change the way we pronounce your name? At home, you're Muhammad. But is it okay if at work we call you Mo? How could there be dishonor in the name of the beloved? How could there be humiliation in the name of the Sahabah? How could there be a lack of privilege and reverence in the identity of being a Muhammadi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? ما إن مدحت محمدا بمقالتي ولكن مدحت مقالتي بمحمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. कि मुहम्मद से वफा तूने तो हम तेरे हैं, ये जहान चीज़ है क्या, लोह व कलम तेरे हैं. The poet says, we have not praised the Prophet by honoring him and by naming our children after him. Naming our children after the Prophet ﷺ is a form of me saying to Allah that I want my lifestyle to be of a Muhammadi. I want my family's life. I have conviction that raising a child with the qualities and the pursuit of the Sahabah's characteristics, there is conviction in there. So there is an intended goal of success. Where there is conviction, there is commitment. Where there is commitment, there is success. وَبِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ يُوقِنُونَ. Without conviction, there is no commitment. And without commitment, there is frivolousness. There is flippantness. There is no commitment. We just move with the trends and fads of time. So he says, is it okay if you change your clothes? Would it be okay if you pray but you don't pray in front of people? Would it be okay if you just shift the way you hold your identity to the point that we can't recognize you because we don't want you to be recognizable? Batil and falsehood is so insecure that the slightest presence of the truth makes them feel vulnerable. Like the person lying in that room, the person that is lying and cheating in their exam, though they're getting good grades, they're like يَحْسَبُونَ كُلَّ صَيْحَةٍ عَلَيْهِمْ. They're so vulnerable that the slightest approach of the truth will make them feel weak. How is it so that the whispers of Bilal saying Ahad made the mountains of Makkah shake? Whispers. The man is being persecuted and being belted and he's being tortured, that they say that to hear him say Ahad, we would have to bend down and listen to him. It wasn't a loud protest. It wasn't a presence of Bilal. It was a presence of his yaqeen. Ahad. So soft, yet so powerful. Because decisions in the courts of Allah are not made by being loud. Loudness is not synonymous to being heard. And silence is not synonymous to weakness. We simply speak to Allah. Soft Ahad. But the entire leadership of Makkah is shook by Ahad. Because falsehood is always going to be insecure from the presence of the truth. We don't need to be as loud as them and have the same numbers as them. We simply need to have conviction. Because people who stand on falsehood will never have conviction. How can they? Having conviction in something which is built upon a fallacy is the ultimate failure. And lacking conviction upon the premise of the truth is also a failure. He says, can you change your clothes? And he responded by saying, Ya Aba Ubaidah, kunna adalla an-nas, fa inna Allah azzana bil Islam. He says, hey my brother, we know who we are. قُتِلَ الْإِنسَانُ مَا أَكْفَرَهُ مِنْ أَيِّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقَهُ مِنْ نُطْفَةٍ خَلَقَهُ فَقَدَّرَهُ. We know who we are. Our strength is not because of who we are. Our strength is because we have Al-Qawi on our side. Our trust that comes through Allah is what propels us. The delusion of me being a source of goodness to the world is a fallacy. Allah uses us not because of who we are, despite our flaws. Allahumma la tahrimna khayra ma indaka bi sharri ma indana was a dua of Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu. He says, we were the lowest of people. We had nothing going for us. People claim that bringing Allah or the Prophet's sunnah into their home will limit their children's potential. I ask myself and yourself, where is my yaqeen? The people of Gaza will not leave their homes because they have yaqeen that Allah has Jannah waiting for them. And we're unable to leave frivolous things for our families and children. We're unable to leave them because our yaqeen is still not built. We're fortunate that we're able to build our yaqeen on the backs of the people of Gaza. Or else we would have to survive and we would have had to build our yaqeen upon the stories of the Sahabah. But we see living Sahaba in front of us who have similar yaqeen in front of us. Building yaqeen is the goal of the father and the mother for their children and family. And one cannot give that which they do not possess. One cannot give that which they do not possess. His kunna adall nas, Islam brought goodness in us. فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ عَزَّنَا بِالْإِسْلَامِ. There was yaqeen that the lifestyle of the Prophet was going to give success. There was yaqeen that avoiding haram was the right thing. There was yaqeen that before I even take medicine, I will call to Allah, Allahumma anta shafi, la shifaa illa shifauka, la yughadiru saqama. We speak about the importance of prayer, but what is prayer without conviction? We speak about the importance of reading Qur'an, but what is Qur'an without conviction? When Allah begins Surah Al-Baqarah, He speaks about all the physical forms of worship. These are people who pray, these are people who give zakat, these are people who read, who recite the Qur'an. But ultimately, he concludes that entire discussion by saying, وَبِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ يُوقِنُونَ. These are people who have conviction in Allah. And through that conviction, they're able to continue worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. كيف أصبحت يا حادثة? We ask ourselves, how do we wake up today? Did I wake up hoping that the world was on my side, or did I wake up hoping that Allah is still on my side? إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَ الصَّابِرِينَ مَعَ الْمُتَّقِينَ مَعَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Which of these qualities will I embody today? Which of these characteristics will I teach my children to live with today? Yaqeen is when a father and a mother, their children miss their prayer in the morning. Yaqeen is to tell them that without your prayer you cannot succeed in school. Yaqeen is telling ourselves that the pleasure of my boss and employer cannot substitute the rida of Allah. That's yaqeen. Ibrahim alayhi salam recognized that I placed this knife that is sharp on the neck of my child, but I have yaqeen that even in this there is a pleasure of Allah. There is success. There is success because the ita'ah of Allah is there. So he said, I woke up having true belief. The Prophet ﷺ said to him, إِنَّ لِكُلِّ قَوْلٍ حَقِيقَةٍ فَمَا حَقِيقَةُ قَوْلِكَ. Verily every statement has proof. It has metrics. It's very easy to say that I woke up with conviction. What is some proof that you have? A very heavy question. The Prophet ﷺ is questioning him. He says, Ya Rasulullah, عَزَفْتُ عَنِ الدُّنْيَا وَأَسْهَرْتُ لَيْلِي وأظمأت نهاري وكأني أنظر إلى رب عرش وكأني أنظر إلى عرش رب الرحمن وكأني أنظر إلى الجنة وإلى الناس في الجنة يتزاورون فيها. So, O Prophet of Allah, my entire life is in Allah's obedience. My nights have become similar to the nights of the people who love Allah. My day has become similar to those who believe in Allah. And also, I live my life as if I can see Jannah. I live my life as if I can see Jannah in front of me and Jahannam hurling behind me. So every decision that I make is with Jannah in front of me and Jahannam behind me. Ali radiallahu anhu used to say, he would say that if today I'm able to see Jannah and Jahannam, it would make no difference. Because my conviction in it is so powerful and it's so cemented that seeing it or not seeing it won't change the reality for me. That I know that it exists. It's in front of me. There was a companion by the name of Umair ibn Hammam radiallahu anhu in the battle of Badr. And the Prophet ﷺ is encouraging the Sahabah to sacrifice in the battle of Badr. And he mentions that in front of us, though there is a battlefield, there is Jannah, arduha as-samawatu wal-ard. There is conviction that there is Jannah ahead of us. We see a grave, but there's conviction that for a believer, beneath, if we were to flip the grave, we would see a garden of Jannah. There's conviction there. And because of that, we commit to Allah. وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتًا. This ayah was an ayah to teach the companions about yaqeen. That even death isn't as real as we think it is. It's simply a transition. That every aspect of this person's soul continues to rise or decline. Though their body is resting, their soul is ascending. So the young companion is hearing the Prophet ﷺ speak about Jannah. That this is a Jannah that is 10 times the size of the heaven and the earth. and he's holding dates in his hands. He says, Ya Rasulullah, a Jannah that is 10 times the size of this world. How is that possible? The Prophet says, no, there's a Jannah waiting for us. And he holds these dates and he puts them aside. He says, bakhin, bakhin. I don't need these dates for now. And he enters the battlefield and he becomes shaheed because there was yaqeen in this. When Bilal radiyallahu anhu was leaving this world, and he was the Prophet's companion throughout the time in Makkah, his source of comfort, arihna ya Bilal, bring me peace, O Bilal, was who Bilal was. At the end of his life in Sham, he's about to pass away, and his wife says to him that, what a day of grief. What a day of grief. What a day of sorrow. What a day of grief and sorrow. And he says, وَلَا تَقُولِي هَكَذَا وَلَكِنْ قُولِي وَافَرَحَا وَاتَرَبَا. What a day of joy. What a day of excitement. غَدًا نَلْقَى مُحَمَّدًا وَحِسْبًا. Tomorrow, I finally get to greet my companions again. Tomorrow, I finally get to drink from the water of Hawd al-Kawthar. Tomorrow, I finally get to feel the palms of the Prophet upon my hands and his warmth against me. Conviction comes from obedience. And through conviction, there is commitment. As believers, wherever we lack in commitment, as all of us do, every one of us, it's simply a byproduct of not building conviction. The Prophet spent his entire 23 years pursuing and teaching the Sahabah how to have conviction. Therefore, when he left this world, there was no fear that they will not be committed. When Abu Jahl came to Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu and he said to him, would you believe that there is a man? Would you believe that there is a man who can travel in a portion of a night to Baytul Maqdis, go meet Allah, come back, and still come back in a small portion of that night? Would you believe in this person, or would you say that something is wrong with him? Conviction does not need the sight. It needs trust, obedience. He says, in qalahu sadaqa. If he said it, I believe in it. We don't need to test whether or not salat works. It works. We don't need to test whether or not the Prophet's sunnah brings compassion. It brings compassion. أَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِهِمْ لو أنفقت ما في الأرض جميعا ما ألفت بين قلوبهم ولكن الله ألف بينهم. Allah brings compassion. Allah brings intimacy. Allah brings growth. All of this is a byproduct of conviction. One day, and I'll end with the story, Fatima radiyallahu anha comes to the Prophet ﷺ, and she is struggling. Her hands have become torn up because of the chores in the household the responsibilities of the house. She comes and says, Ya Rasulullah, give me some support. I need some help. I can't manage, this is too much. And you have the means to support me. The Prophet says, I'll come back in the evening and I'll speak to you. In one narration, he tells her right then and there, Oh Fatima, I can give you the support that you want, the maids and the servants. Or I can provide to you statements that if you were to use, you will never find fatigue to be a part of your life. This requires conviction. The Prophet says, Ud'u Allah wa antum muqinuna bil ijaba. That the condition of a dua being answered is that a person, before he drops his hands or her hands and the tears are still strolling down their cheeks, they believe Allah accepted their dua. It comes from conviction. He says, I'll teach you a few statements if you wish. If Fatima could have said, oh Father, give me both. She says, Ya Rasulullah, give me the statements that will benefit my akhirah as well. And the Prophet taught her, Ya awwal al-awwaleen, Ya akhir al-akhirin, Ya dhal quwwat al-mateen, Ya rahim al-masakin, Ya arham al-rahimin. He says, Oh Fatima, whenever you call upon Allah with these 5 beautiful, comprehensive calls, any dua that you make, Allah will accept it. So, Ya Rasulullah, I don't need any support because I have these statements. My dear brothers and sisters, the ultimate goal of everything in this world is to take away from our conviction, to take away from our yaqeen. Shaitan's goal is to simply create doubt. And Allah's goal is to remind us that every aspect of this religion leads towards the truth. In no aspect of it, as difficult as it may be, takes us away from the truth of al-haq, which brings conviction, which allows people to be committed. Hence, people make sacrifices for dunya because they have conviction in dunya. Similarly, people make sacrifices for Allah because they have conviction in the promise of Allah. May Allah make us amongst those people that we have clarity. With clarity we have commitment, and through that commitment we're able to live a life that till our last breath we are obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's commandments in the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Wa akhu da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.